Hello and welcome to Indus News Live from Islamabad. I am Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. The Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia says Gulf states must be consulted before the US revises the nuclear agreement with Iran. Speaking on the sidelines of a security conference in Bahrain, the minister said a sustainable deal can only be reached by consulting regional partners. US President-elect Joe Biden has signaled a willingness to return to the Iran nuclear accord if it shows compliance with the terms of the deal. The US says Kabul and the Taliban have started talks on the core agenda of intra-Afghan negotiations in Doha. In a series of tweets, Zalmay Khalilzad said steps taken in the recent days were positive and hopeful. He urged both sides to accelerate peace efforts to end the country's long-running war. Farmers in northern India have been demonstrating against new laws near the capital Delhi for 11 days. They believe the government's farming reforms will endanger their livelihoods. The centre has failed to break a deadlock with the protesting farmers despite several hours of talks. Polling is underway in Venezuela's parliamentary elections that are expected to deliver President Nicolas Maduro control over the country's legislature. His United States-backed rival Juan Guaido is leading a boycott of the vote, which he says is a fraud. Opposition parties have called for a referendum to counter the vote. US deaths from the coronavirus have surpassed 280,000 with 14.5 million cases. The virus has claimed more than 140,000 lives in India, with the tally of infections crossing 9.6 million. Meanwhile, Pakistan has reported 58 deaths and over 3,300 cases overnight. The nation's death toll has risen to 8,361. The virus has claimed over 1.5 million lives across the world and infected 66 million. And in cricket, Pakistan have announced an 18-member squad for their 2020 series against New Zealand. The three-match series will begin on the 18th of December. Well, these were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back, and now the news in detail. The Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia says Gulf states must be consulted before the US revises the nuclear agreement with Iran. Speaking on the sidelines of a security conference in Bahrain, the minister said a sustainable deal can only be reached by consulting regional partners. US President-elect Joe Biden has signaled a willingness to return to the Iran nuclear accord if it shows compliance with the terms of the deal. The nuclear deal, formerly known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, was negotiated under the presidency of Barack Obama in 2015. But in 2018, incumbent President Donald Trump pulled out from the nuclear deal and imposed sanctions on Iran. Iran has killed 6 ISIS militants in an airstrike in northern Kirkuk province. The Iraqi military says the raid destroyed a hideout tunnel in Sarjoan district. In 2017, Iraq declared victory over ISIS, which took a third of the country in 2014. But in recent months, suspected militants have stepped up attacks, particularly in the area between Kirkuk and Diyala provinces. The US says Kabul and the Taliban have started talks on the core agenda of intra-Afghan negotiations in Doha. In a series of tweets, Zalmay Khalilzad said steps taken in the recent days were positive and hopeful. Khalilzad urged both sides to accelerate peace efforts to end the country's long-running war. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department welcomed the first meeting of the Afghan High Council for National Reconciliation. Earlier, Khalilzad met the head of Taliban's political office, Mullah Brother, and the head of intra-Afghan negotiations, Sheikh Abdul Hakim. Spokesperson Naeem Wardak said the release of the Taliban prisoners and removal of leaders from the blacklist was discussed. U.S. President Donald Trump has once again claimed victory in the presidential election, alleging massive fraud. In his first rally appearance since the November 3rd election, Trump campaigned for 2 Republican senators in Valdosta, Georgia. Addressing the rally, Trump said he came to persuade Georgians to vote for Republican Senate candidates in a runoff election on January 5th. The election will determine which party controls the U.S. Senate. Trump repeated unsubstantiated claims of electoral fraud.
You must go vote and vote early, starting December 14th. You have to do it. They cheated and they rigged our presidential election, but we will still win it. We will still win it. We'll still win it. And they're going to try and rig this election, too.
Ahead of the rally, Trump pressed Georgia's governor to overturn election results and call a special session of the state legislature. And now moving on to U.S. deaths from the coronavirus have surpassed 280,000 with 14.5 million cases. The virus has claimed more than 140,000 lives in India, with the tally of infections crossing 9.6 million. The virus has claimed over 1.5 million lives across the world and infected 66 million people. More in the following report.
The unprecedented surge of COVID-19 across the globe has brought the world's healthcare systems to their knees. Faced with a dire shortage of hospital beds, more states in the U.S. are imposing sweeping lockdowns. Down south in Latin America, deaths and infections are spiking in Brazil as the government refuses to impose any restrictions amid the second wave. While the US and the UK are set to start mass dispensation of vaccines this week, Russia has already begun immunizing its health workers.
I have not had coronavirus and I want to protect myself and my loved ones with whom I live. That's why I took this decision. I am the only medical worker in the family, so God forbid, to avoid bringing it home, I decided to get vaccinated.
The recent wave of restrictive measures across Europe has somewhat contained the spike in deaths. But most nations fear a third wave of the virus after the Christmas season ends. Further east, deaths and infections are on the rise again in Iran as people ignore precautions and take to markets during the winter vacation.
Every day we see that the national COVID-19 death toll is in the hundreds. This is simply too much. With the size of the population in our country, how can we accept such numbers of deaths? And the reason behind it is because people are not adhering to the rules.
Meanwhile, Japan and Australia are now set to ease restrictions on domestic travel after successfully containing the second wave.
In Pakistan, 58 people have died of COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, pushing the death toll to 8,361. The health ministry says more than 3,300 tested positive for the virus overnight. The ministry says there are more than 53,000 active coronavirus cases in the country. It said out of more than 416,000 countrywide cases, over 355,000 people have recovered. Officials said 182,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while Punjab has reported nearly 123,000 cases. In the capital city Islamabad, some 32,000 infections have been recorded. Farmers in northern India have been demonstrating against new laws near the capital, New Delhi, for 11 days. They believe the government's farming reforms will endanger their livelihoods. The centre has failed to break a deadlock with the protesting farmers despite several hours of talks. The 6th meeting between farmer unions and union ministers will take place on Wednesday, at which a fresh proposal from the Modi government will be tabled. Protesters' leaders have rejected the government's offer to amend some contentious provisions of the new laws. They are demanding a total repeal. Polling is underway in parliamentary elections that are expected to deliver President Nicolas Maduro control over the country's legislature. In a message to the public, Maduro said the time has come to vote for peace and the future of the country. His United States-backed rival, Juan Guaido, is leading a boycott of the polls, which he calls are a fraud. The opposition parties have called for a referendum to counter the vote. If President Maduro wins the election, his ruling Socialist Party will gain control of the 227-seat National Assembly, the only institution not in its hands. The US and the European Union have expressed fear the contest will not be fair. The elections are being contested by almost 14,000 candidates from more than 100 parties. In Armenia, 17 opposition parties have issued an ultimatum to Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, demanding him to step down by Tuesday. They have been holding protests in Yerevan after the signing of a trilateral truce over Nagorno-Karabakh. Opposition politicians say the November 9th statement signed by Pashinyan was an act of submission. Pashinyan's opponents also blame him for the country's economic and social problems. Armenian President Armen Sarkisyan has called for an early parliamentary election. He has urged the Prime Minister to hand over the power to a government of national accord before the polls. In France, thousands have taken to the streets in Paris against police violence and the controversial security bill. Protesters launched projectiles at riot police, with security forces firing tear gas to disperse the crowd. Paramedics were seen tending to injured protesters at the scene of clashes. Demonstrators say the government is trying to cripple civil liberties to document police brutality. They chanted slogans against the police and the government. The new security bill sets out to increase surveillance tools and restrict rights on circulating images of police officers. France's President Emmanuel Macron is set to host Egyptian counterpart Abdel Fattah el-Sisi for a 3-day state visit. But ahead of the visit, Paris is facing calls from activists that Cairo must not be indulged. In a statement, a dozen human rights groups said the French president must stand up for his commitment to promote human rights in Egypt. They said Paris has allowed French companies to provide Cairo with surveillance and crowd control tools. The rights groups highlighted that there are over 60,000 prisoners of conscience in Egypt. Some NGOs will also hold a protest outside the French Parliament on Tuesday, denouncing the partnership between France and Egypt. Britain and the European Union are resuming talks today in a last-ditch attempt to reach a post-Brexit trade deal. In a joint statement, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen called for further efforts to resolve serious differences. The long-running talks have experienced severe hindrance over issues of fisheries, level playing field and governance. Negotiating teams will reconvene in Brussels today, followed by a discussion between the leaders on Monday. Despite significant differences, both sides remain optimistic about securing a trade deal of around $1 trillion per year.
Significant differences remain on the 3 critical issues: level playing field, governance and fisheries. Both sides underline that no agreement is feasible if these issues are not solved. And whilst recognizing the seriousness of these differences, we agreed that a further effort should be undertaken by our negotiating teams to assess whether these issues can be resolved. We are therefore instructing our chief negotiators to reconvene tomorrow in Brussels, and I will speak again to Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Monday evening.
Russia has slammed the U.S. call for a moratorium on the construction of Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. In a social media post, a Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson responded to remarks by the U.S. ambassador to Germany. Maria Zakharova said the U.S. has always given a response of political aggression to plans for a Russian pipeline. The Russian diplomat said Moscow has faced unlawful resistance from Washington on its projects for decades. Washington says the pipeline compromises European energy security. The UK Royal Navy has highlighted significant Russian presence close to the country's waters. In a statement, the Royal Navy said it closely monitored 9 Russian vessels in the past 2 weeks. It said these included a surface submarine destroyer, corvette, patrol ship, and their supporting tugs and supply ships. The statement said 8 Royal Navy ships were closely monitoring every movement from waters close to Scotland's west coast. First Sea Lord Admiral Tony Radakin has warned of increased Russian activity in the region. He said Britain is always ready to respond to any threats in home waters and around the globe. And now it's time to take a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back, and now moving on to Pakistan is observing the 49th martyrdom anniversary of 1971 war hero Major Shabir Sharif Shaheed. He embraced martyrdom after being hit directly by a tank shell on the 6th of December 1971. During the 1971 war, Major Shabir Sharif was commanding the 6th Frontier Force Regiment. He was ordered to capture high ground near Suleiman Ki headworks defended by more than a company of the Assam Regiment. Sharif attacked and captured that terrain, killing 43 Indian soldiers and destroying 4 tanks. He and his men repulsed a counter-attack by 2 enemy battalions. Due to his sacrifice, the government of Pakistan awarded him Nishan-e-Haider, the highest military gallantry award. In a tweet, the military spokesperson Major General Babar Iftikhar said Major Shabir Sharif was a symbol of valor and patriotism. In the U.S., a fire has scorched a historic 19th century middle collegiate church in Lower Manhattan, New York. The fire department said 4 people were injured in the incident and a probe was underway. The blaze started in a 5-story vacant building next to the church. Built in 1892, the church is home to the oldest congregation of the collegiate churches of New York. It also houses New York's Liberty Bell. In a tweet, New York's mayor termed the incident heartbreaking and pledged to help rebuild the church. In Australia, authorities have asked residents of Happy Valley on Fraser Island to evacuate with a bushfire expected to reach the town. The blaze caused by an illegal campfire has scorched nearly half of the World Heritage listed island. In an interview, Queensland Emergency Services said there were 48 fires engulfing the island at present. Officials said 90 personnel, 38 vehicles and 17 aircrafts are battling to put out the fires. They said the intensity of fires had lessened, but leaving immediately was the safest option for residents. Japan has retrieved a space probe from Australia's remote outback after a 6-year mission. The capsule from the unmanned Hayabusa 2 carries the first extensive samples of dust from an asteroid. It was flown by helicopter from the outback to a domestic research facility of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. Scientists hope the samples may help reveal more about origins of the planets. The Ryugu asteroid is about 300 million kilometers away from Earth. The Hayabusa 2 blasted off in December 2014 to collect samples in a pioneering mission. A Chinese probe carrying samples from the lunar surface has successfully docked with a spacecraft orbiting the moon. More in the following report.
In a first for a Chinese spacecraft, the ascender of the Chang'e 5 probe has successfully docked with the orbiter-returner combination on the lunar orbit. The samples collected from the moon have been transferred from the ascender to the returner. The mission has also completed the data collection tasks and sent all the data back to the Earth for analysis. It also completed a full-field multispectral scanning for the sampling site. So far, researchers have got some preliminary results based on the data sent back by Chang'e 5.
Chang'e 5 landed at the northeast of the Oceanus Procellarum on the near side of the moon. Based on the remote sensing images collected by Chang'e 1, Chang'e 2 and some foreign researchers, we can see the terrain there is quite flat, filled with basalts formed in lunar volcanic activities.
Chang'e 5 is one of the most complicated and challenging missions in Chinese aerospace history. It is also the world's first moon sample mission in more than 40 years. Next, the orbiter returner will separate from the ascender and wait for the right time to return to Earth.
A Christmas tree has been lit outside the Church of Nativity in Bethlehem's Manger Squares, but due to coronavirus restrictions, only a few people attended the traditional ceremony this year.
With a bright red star gleaming at its top, the giant tree was illuminated by hundreds of golden white bulbs as fireworks lit up the night sky. Just 12 months ago, Bethlehem town, which Christians believe to be the birthplace of Jesus, was celebrating its busiest festive season. But now it is shaping up for a dismal Christmas. Currently, the West Bank is under partial lockdown in a bid to minimize crowds for the festive season.
For sure, this year's Lighting the Tree celebration are not like before. This year, not many people attend for sure because of the coronavirus pandemic. Bethlehem is sad in this festive season. We had hoped that this year would be a better one compared to other, but unfortunately, due to the coronavirus pandemic, it has been a sad one.
All across Bethlehem, inns are closed, the shepherds are likely to be under lockdown, and restaurant tables are unoccupied with no tourists in sight.
In Brazil, a drive-through Christmas lights display has brightened up the holiday season ravaged by the coronavirus this year. More in the following report.
All may not be calm in 2020, but some things are still bright this Christmas in Brazil. In the city of Sao Paulo, the Lumina Festival is bringing the spark of the season to locals who were otherwise stuck at home during the pandemic. Organizers installed elaborate Christmas decorations and glittering lights that can be viewed from the safety of a private car.
The idea was to have a moment of joy, a moment when people can safely leave their homes, to feel safe and enjoy moments within a family, with the love, peace and hope that Christmas gives, even if it is just for an hour or 40 minutes.
For those passing by for a glimpse of Christmas from their cars, the results are delightful but also bittersweet.
This is a great event. People were at home, thinking about what they can do, and to have an event like this, where you're safe to not get out of the car, is great.
Millions of Brazilians are preparing for a very different Christmas this year, with many cities also cancelling traditional New Year's Eve fireworks festivities.
And in cricket, Pakistan have announced an 18-member squad for the 2020 series against New Zealand. The three-match series will begin on December 18 and end on December 22. The squad was finalized by head coach Misbah-ul-Haq and captain Babar Azam in consultation with Pakistan Shaheens coach Ijaz Ahmed. Both Pakistan and Pakistan Shaheen squads are scheduled to depart for Queenstown on Tuesday. Pakistan have recalled Hussain Talat and Sarfaraz Ahmed in the only one changes from the side that beat Zimbabwe 3-0 in November. Babar Azam will lead the green team, while Shadab Khan will serve as the vice captain. In football, Chelsea came from 1 goal behind to beat Leeds United 3-1 in the English Premier League. With this win, Chelsea have moved to the top of the table. Former Blue striker Patrick Bamford gave Leeds an early lead at Stamford Bridge. Oliver Giroud then equalized for Chelsea in the first half, scoring his 5th goal of the week for Blues. Kurt Zouma and Christian Pulisic scored second-half goals for Chelsea to make the scoreline 3-1 at the final whistle. In another fixture, Manchester City beat Fulham 2-0 at home. Raheem Sterling and Kevin De Bruyne scored goals for City. In the Spanish La Liga, Cadiz beat Barcelona 2-1 at the Estadio Ramón de Carranza Stadium. This is their first La Liga win against Barcelona since 1991. Alvaro Giménez put Cadiz in front before an own goal from Pedro Alcala brought Barca in the second half. Former Manchester City striker Alvaro Negredo then took advantage of the shambolic defending to score the winner. In another fixture, Atletico Madrid beat Valladolid 2-0 at Wanda Metropolitano Stadium. Thomas Lemar and Marcos Llorente scored goals for the home side. Real Madrid also won their away fixture 1-0 against Sevilla. In the Italian Serie A, Inter Milan beat Bologna 3-1 at San Siro. Achraf Hakimi scored a brace for Inter as they go second on the Serie A table. Romelu Lukaku continued his fine goal-scoring season, netting the opener in the 16th minute of the match. Achraf Hakimi lashed onto Marcelo Brozovic's ball forward to double Inter's lead. Emmanuel Vignato briefly gave Bologna hope, but Hakimi's fine solo goal sealed the win for Antonio Conte's team. In another fixture, Juventus beat Torino 2-1 at home. Paris Saint-Germain beat Montpellier 3-1 at La Mosson in the Football League 1. Kylian Mbappe scored 100 goals for League 1 leaders Paris Saint-Germain. Colin Dagba put PSG ahead with the first goal of his career from Angel Di Maria's ball. Steffi Mavididi equalized from close range before Moise Kean scored a fine goal from a tight Angel to put PSG ahead. Mbappe tapped home from close range for a landmark goal in his 137th game for the club. PSG are on top of the League 1 table, winning 28 points from 13 fixtures. And now it's time to have a look at the weather update across the globe. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.